this is just mind-boggling. So let's see. What the video got to say. Okay, give me 1 second here. So let's play it. You see that? That's way too many steps. That is way too many steps.
This is an example of a traveling violation after a player has ended his dribble. A moving player may only take 2 legal steps after gathering the ball to shoot, pass, or come to a stop.
Did you hear that? A moving player is only allowed to take 2 steps, not 3 or 4. Okay? And when you stopped, you could pivot on one leg, but you can't pick up your pivot and step again. That's traveling. That's walking. Okay? Those are the rules on all levels, in high school, college, obviously pros, semi-pro, you name it. Leagues at the YMCA. Those are the rules. Right? It's clear. It's not that difficult. It's not rocket science to see somebody travel. And the problem with being a superstar like Michael Jordan, some referees are afraid to blow that whistle against Michael Jordan. Blow the whistle. If he traveled, he traveled. Don't sugarcoat it, ref. That's what drives me crazy about this stuff. Right? So let's continue about the rule book about what traveling is.
On this play, the offensive post player ends his dribble with his right foot on the floor, and he then takes more than 2 steps in order to attempt a field goal.
1,
stepping left, right,
2, 2.
Right. This is a traveling violation.
That's 4 steps he took. Watch Michael Jordan. That's the travel. Watch it. 1, 2, 3. That's a travel. I mean, that's clearly a travel. Why did the ref call it? I don't understand it. I mean, am I not seeing it? And when I used to watch Michael Jordan play, it drove me crazy because he did stuff like that. And remember anyway, don't get me started, because now I'm getting more excited about this. Excited meaning, I used to referee games also, and if somebody traveled, I called it. I used to get yelled at, but I still call it. And I don't care if you're Michael Jordan or Michael Smith down the street. If you travel and I'm refereeing a game, I'm gonna call it. All right. So that's clearly a travel because that's an advantage you're doing. Rules are there for a reason. Let's continue.
This is an example of a traveling violation. An offensive player who receives the ball and establishes a pivot foot may move his other foot as many times as he chooses. However, the ball must be out of his hands to start his dribble before he lifts his pivot foot. The offensive player in the post here receives the ball, turns and faces up, establishing his left foot as his pivot foot. He legally moves his right foot, but he then raises his left foot, his pivot foot.
And that's a travel. You can't do that. I learned how to play basketball at a very, very young age. So, of course, as a kid, I was making mistakes. But at the professional level like this, you should not be. I know stuff happens. People travel. I get it. But come on, this is like blatantly traveling. You picked up your pivot foot before you even dribbled. You cannot do that. Let's continue.
Prior to releasing the ball on the dribble. This is a traveling violation.
You saw what happened, right? Michael Jordan dragged his pivot and stepped. Watch. Boom. 2, 3. Look at that. Michael Jordan just traveling all over the place. And the refs not doing anything. What the? No, come on. I mean, are you serious? Are you serious? He's literally running a marathon, sprints out there with the ball. Am I the only person freaking out here? That's a travel. Let's continue.
Example example of a traveling violation for lifting the pivot foot. The offensive player here establishes his left foot as his pivot foot, and he then lifts and steps with his pivot foot prior to his dribble being released. Once the offensive player established
you
the
can't do that.
he may move his other foot as many times as he chooses.
It may look subtle, but he did lift his pivot foot before he dribbled. It wasn't like a big movement, but it did. He did do that, and the ref has to call it because it gives him an advantage. It gives a defensive player a disadvantage. So it has to be called. Because if it was that easy just to run with the ball, then this would be football, not basketball.
But the ball must be out of his hands to start his dribble before he lifts his pivot foot off the floor. This is a traveling violation.
Watch Michael Jordan. Watch. Watch his pivot foot. See? I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Michael Jordan traveled a lot. I'm gonna do a video one day of how many times Michael Jordan pushed off when he was driving, or pushed off when he was going to the basket. Because that's another video all up on his own too. Because don't get me started with that. Again, I wasn't the biggest Jordan fan. Obviously, he's probably the GOAT. So I'm not taking anything away from his athletic ability and his achievements. But me personally, I was never the biggest Jordan fan. In fact, I only had one pair of Jordans in my life. And I was like, I think I was a senior in high school or something. And it wasn't even the up-to-date ones. I had bought an older one because, I just couldn't afford it back then, number one. Number two, yeah, I never had Jordans like that. I don't know. Call me weird. I just never had Jordan like that. So let's look at probably one more time Jordan traveled.
This is an example of a traveling violation for lifting the pivot foot. The offensive player here establishes his left foot as his pivot foot, and he then lifts and steps.
Yeah, that's definitely a travel.
Prior to his dribble being released. Once the offensive player established a pivot foot,
see,
he may move his other foot as many times.
See, that happens more often than you think, believe it or not. And the refs miss it sometimes also. Again, you cannot do that. It may seem subtle to you, but that extra stepping before the ball goes to the ground, that could be an advantage for the offensive player and a disadvantage for the defensive player. Because it's like you running football. It's like you're doing football. And so it has to be called. Again, I used to referee games a lot also. And I used to call those travels. I missed some of them, but I used to call as much as I've seen them. I don't care if the guy does it 10 times in a row. I'm going to call it 10 times in a row.
Times as he chooses. But the ball must be out of his hands to start his dribble before he lifts his pivot foot off.
Yeah, that's clear travel.
This is a traveling violation.
All right, let's look at this last clip of Michael Jordan traveling again. I mean, nice move, but you traveled. Pivot foot, he moves it before he dribbles. You see that, right? His left foot was his pivot foot, and before he dribbled the ball, he shuffled it and then stepped and then dribbled. That's a travel, and this is a good example of when I said the ref has to call it, because when guys travel and it's not called, they have an advantage. So because Jordan traveled, he had the advantage on the defensive guy and was able to score and dunk. Okay, so and the referee did not call it. Look, I don't want to take anything away from Jordan. Obviously, Jordan was awesome. And that's even worse because Jordan was a great player. So he didn't need help from the referees. Not saying the referees helped him on purpose. I'm not saying the referee did it on purpose. We are humans and we all make mistakes. So I want to be perfectly clear. I'm not saying the NBA was helping Michael Jordan. I'm not saying the NBA refs was helping Michael Jordan. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, sometimes we are human and some people can get intimidated by certain superstars. Okay? Let's watch. One more clip.
This is an an example of a traveling violation.
So anyway, so those are just some, few examples among dozens that Michael Jordan traveled. Now, of course, if you go looking for other videos, also, I'm pretty sure I can find other basketball players who traveled and this and that. Look, I get it, especially at that level. It's very competitive, very intense, and sometimes they do it by accident most of the time. Okay, when people travel, it's usually by accident. They're not trying to travel on purpose. But sometimes the excitement of the game, clutch times and sometimes people double dribble, sometimes people carry. I get it. So with that being said, I'm not here to pick on Michael Jordan. This video is not here to pick on Michael Jordan. I was just here to point out the fact that he used to, like other players, he used to travel a lot. All right, he used to travel a lot, but he's still one of the GOATs, or is the GOAT. All right, so let me know what you think about this video. Was I wrong for picking out his, the times he traveled, or I was just, I was just showing y'all and explaining to y'all what the travel is. So for those of y'all who don't play basketball or don't know the rules, that's a travel. You cannot do that. Okay. So if you like this video, please press the subscribe button and the like button. And I'm gonna do more videos like this with other NBA players, and then we're gonna have fun doing it. Okay. So I'll see y'all next time. In the meantime, in between time, peace, everybody.